My name is Shubham Santosh Pandit, and today's date is 10, 10th August 2021, and today's video topic is constructors used in Java. In Java, a constructor is a block of code similar to the method. It is called when the instance of the class is created. At the time of calling constructor, memory for the object is allocated in the memory. It is a special type of method which is used to initialize the object. Every time an object is created using new keyword, at least one constructor is called. It calls a default constructor if there is no constructor available in the class. In such cases, Java compiler provides a default constructor by default. There are two types of constructor in Java: no arg constructor and parameterized constructor. It is called constructor because it constructs the values at the time of object creation. It is not necessary to write constructor for a class. It is because Java compiler create a default constructor if your class doesn't have any constructor. It takes all the default values. First, some simple rules for creating a Java constructor. There are two main rules. Constructor name must be same as the class name. It is primary rule. Then a constructor must have no explicit return type, and a Java constructor cannot be abstract, static, final, and synchronized. We can use access modifier while declaring a constructor. It controls the object creation. In other words, we can have private, protected, public, or default constructor in Java. Types of Java constructors. There are two types of constructor. First is default constructor, that means no arg constructor, and then parameterized constructor. Then we will discuss about types of Java constructor. Discuss about Java constructor, that means default constructor and parameterized constructor. First of all, Java default constructor. A constructor is called a default constructor when it does not have any parameter, means it does not contains any type of code or parameter in it. The syntax of default constructor is class name, parenthesis, and curly braces. That's it. Example of default constructor. In this example, we are creating no arg constructor in the by class. It will be invoked at the time of object creation. First, we will take a class as a bike1, then we are creating a default constructor. Then bike1 that will print the bike is created, and in the other class we will take a main method and we'll call the bike1 class by the reference variable b and equal to new bike1. So the output will be bike is created. If there is no constructor in class, compiler automatically create a default constructor. But we have to know what is the purpose of creating a default constructor. The default constructor is used to provide the default values to the object like 0, null, etc. depending upon its data type. I'll take another example of default constructor that display the default values. Let's see another example. We'll take a class name as student3 and that take int id and string name, and then we'll create a method void display, and in that we'll print id plus name. And in another class we'll take a main method, in that we'll call a student3 class by the reference variable s1 equal to new student3, and then then again call the student3 class by the reference variable s2 equal to new student3, and we'll call the display method by s1 by reference variable s1 dot display and also s2 dot display. As it will show the output of 0 and null, because it will show the default value that are 0 and null. The above class we are not creating any constructor, so compiler provide a default constructor. Here 0 and null are the value provided by the default constructor. Then parameterized constructor, a constructor which has a specific number of parameters is called as parameterized constructor. Why? What is the need of using the parameterized constructor? The parameterized constructor is used to provide different value to distinct object. However, we can provide the same value also. We'll explain this by taking an example. In this, we have created a constructor of student class that have two parameters. We can have any number of parameter in the constructor. We'll take a class by the name student4, and that will take int id and string name, and student s4, in that will take int I and string n. Then we'll declare id equal to I and name equal to n, and in the void display method we will print id plus name. And in another class we'll take a main method and call the student4 class by the reference variable s1 and create equal to new student, and in that will take id as 111 and name as current, and then we'll again call student s4 class by reference variable s2 and equal to new student 4, in that will take id as 222 and name as Aryan, and then we'll call display method by reference variable s1 and also display method by reference variable s2. Then it will show the output as 111 Karan and 222 Aryan. So that is the example of parameterized constructor. Then what is the overloading in the constructor? In Java, constructor is just a method but without return type. It can also be overloaded like Java methods. Constructor overloading in Java is a technique of having more than one constructor with different parameter list. They are arranged in a way that each constructor perform different tasks. They are differentiated by the compiler by the number of parameters in the list and their types. Difference between constructor and method are constructor is used to initialize the state of an object, and a method is used to expose the behavior of the object. The constructor invokes implicity, the method invokes explicity. The constructor name must be same as the class, and the method name may or may not be same as the class name. So that's all about the constructors used in Java.